that for you. What an incredible journey. It's okay. Okay.
So you buy any?
All right, we are now live on YouTube,
You buy
everyone.
any EV?
Maybe.
How big are you?
And I know we have a tight crunch. Mayor Cogswell is being pulled for some emergencies in about 30 minutes. So let's jump right in and see if we can fly through this.
Yeah, I'm up first,
You're up
right?
and
So,
just
oh, click, okay. I don't know how to presentation, but, well, I think, welcome everybody, and let's have a brief moment of silence before we get started. Okay, I guess I'm up and maybe I have a presentation here. See, there we go. There's the agenda. Look at this. And we've done that. And here we are. And there we go. Look at that. I do have a presentation. Comprehensive water plan is out now and been presented to council through a couple of different workshops. And where we are right now is setting up the committee, and I'm just trying to think of what the name of it is. New Basin Flood Action Committee, which it was the original, I think it was originally called the Perimeter Wall Committee or something like that. But because this is really expanded to the entire city, we have broadened it. Council has formalized the makeup of the various members that will be on that committee. We are going through the process now of reviewing applications that have been submitted for membership on that committee. And we anticipate to have that committee up and running and members approved by the end of this year. And so they will be mainly having two primary focuses. One will be to advise on all things flood action oriented, as well as help facilitate public engagement on the water plan itself. So excited about that. I think it's a good makeup of different industry professionals and experts, as well as elected officials. So excited about that getting off the ground. I'll talk a little bit about the Basin Flood Action Plan or Program, which is part of the water plan, broke out the entire city into various drainage basins. And so what we are doing now is working with the stormwater department to map out current projects that are ongoing related to those basins, as well as proposed projects on the short term, right? And this is cleaning out drainage ditches. This is nature-based solutions that have been contemplated in, from the beginning of the Dutch dialogues to, any and all studies that we've done related to flooding in the region, and 16 basins. And again, short and some long-term initiatives related to each one of those. So we're trying to define the vernacular of flooding on a local basis. I mean, so you live in Avondale, but you're part of the I'm blanking on what the Avondale flood basin is called, but you're also part of this flood basin, right? So you know where that drainage ditch in front of your house drains to, and then where that drains to. There we go, a little feedback. And so on and so forth, so that people just get educated and understand that how it all kind of works. And then part of this effort too is to get organized on where our funding sources are and funding needs are, and how we're going to solve for these both short and long-term initiatives. To further get into the weeds on this, because I think it's very relevant, is we're doing a pretty in-depth study as part of I'm proposing in our budget this year, which is going to council for the final for approval in the next 30 days. Some monies for an update to our maintenance program for drainage. And the reality of it is, and this is not knocking our stormwater department, it's just a reality of the need. There's so much deferred maintenance. It's in essence become a capital project, and it's not a cheap one. And so we're trying to get a real handle on how to phase that and do it in a very constructive way to kind of get caught up. And that may result in some increases to stormwater fees, or at least presenting that to the voters to decide, because look, we haven't increased the stormwater fees in a long time. We have real deferred maintenance. This is specifically what it would go towards. So people can be a lot more comfortable about chipping in if they have real confidence that there's going to be execution on it. The last thing I'll point out, and this is by no means approved, we are looking at some help with engineering and certain initiatives specific to resiliency. We've had Dale, we're lucky enough to have Dale Morris for a number of years and really evolved into these policy plans. As I've been pretty vocal about, I think it's time to go from these policies, which have been implemented in a large part, and now start figuring out the engineering side of it. So right now we're looking at in our budget, we have some money to hire a third-party engineer to help us implement some of these initiatives, because there's some low-hanging fruit that I think we can do pretty immediately. And that all ties back to the Basin Flood Action Plan. And then, another large component of this, specific to the peninsula and its obvious origin, is the battery extension, is what I call it, perimeter protection. We have signed the MOU changing the scope of that work to a city-led initiative versus a Corps-led initiative. We're working on, we've hired Black and Beach, who was involved in the water plan, to run point on the battery extension plan alignment and design. But in essence, it's, I met with Black and Beach, and the plan is to make it look like the battery and be a multi-use path, as well as a very important piece of infrastructure to protect against sea level rise. We're also doing some things like adding in the knee wall, and council just funded JMT to finalize the design on that, which is along Lockwood. And if it's a version of what was proposed, one of the things that was proposed in the water plan with the Lockwood Lakes, where you have a combination of the perimeter protection with the knee wall, creating a retention element in the marsh between Lockwood and the low water mark that'll serve as additional retention to Colonial Lake and Long Lake. So trying to be creative about it and kill proverbial two birds with one stone. And it's really exciting, I think, that it was just kind of an interesting combination of different events that came together at the same time with the water plan and this restructuring that I think is going to be very constructive. So a lot of work, and certainly appreciation for all the work that came in, was done prior to this, that allowed for that to happen. Yep.
So the knee wall, that is lower than what the core proposed,
Oh, yeah.
a lot lower.
I mean, it's like
So-
18 inches.
So, how does that fade into a taller structure?
Okay, so for clarity, just, the battery extension as we're proposing it, the wall, right? I don't know, we can't call it wall. Battery extension will go from the Coast Guard base along the low water mark, not along Lockwood. So out, basically in the river,
Oh, okay.
along the low water. Actually, won't touch the marsh. It'll be in the mud.
Okay.
And it'll go from Coast Guard all the way to the marina. Okay. And so that'll be the outer wall or protection that will have gates that can control the tide coming in and out.
And that's like down the road,
Well, that's part of the core deal. That's part of the core deal.
right? But
Yeah.
that's not, so the knee wall would come first.
The knee wall is coming first because we already have the ability to do that. But I didn't want to build, to your point, the knee wall and then just rip it out when the battery extension came. So I was like, but then the water plan came out and said, if you actually put space in between the perimeter protection and create stormwater retention from the inside, that's very constructive.
I'm
And
understanding what you're saying.
so what we're doing is, in essence, between the outer wall or the battery and the liner, you create another lake that's controlled, but it'll be salt water. It'll be, tide comes in and out through the gates. But you can control it.
Okay.
You can control it from stormwater coming in because Colonial Lake and Long Lake feed out and empty out into that marsh area. And that's used as retention. So it's a very holistic approach to both storm surge and protection and tidal sea level rise, but also stormwater. So it's combining two different things that I think will be very effective.
And then the timeline, so the knee wall, what is the timeline for that?
So we are almost at construction drawings. The contract that we finalized with JMT is to finish construction drawings. Then we'll get pricing, but that could start as early as 25. We'll need to figure out where the funding is. We need to know what the number is. And then in 25, we will have confirmation on alignment and design with the core for the outer wall. But that's more of a 3-year PED process with the core to go through that before we can start construction.
So construction on the outer one wouldn't start till 28.
At the earliest. I mean, it probably 29. But I can assure you, we are doing everything we can even meeting with the Secretary of the Army, we're pretty focused on it. Because it really does impact a lot on both. It impacts Union Pier, it impacts New Market Creek, it impacts the Arc Bridge, it impacts Brittlebank Park. I mean, there are a lot of things that tie into that perimeter piece of infrastructure. Okay, King and UG Street, there's where we are at the groundbreaking. That is under construction, fully funded. And I think, again, another example of taking something that is very functional and will solve a lot of that flooding at that pretty significant bowl there at King and UG. And it's really not just that intersection. I mean, it's about a 8-block radius around it. And marrying it with something that is attractive, not just a piece of, not just a pump house, so to speak, right? So that is broken ground and we are on that. Here we go. I'm being pushed on this. This is if you have anybody that's interested in serving on the Basin Flood Action Committee, to go ahead and submit applications, because we're going to be making those decisions. I said, I think certainly by the end of the year, it should be voted on. I think probably by the end of this month is when we'll be submitting the recommendations to council.
And are some of those seats sort of like set to different groups?
Yes, I mean, there's, there are engineers, there are environmental experts. There are, I can't remember all of them right now, but it was approved by council. I'm sure we could circulate that. I'm sure it's on there too.
It's on our website, yeah.
Yeah.
Has there already been interest from WSC that you know?
Probably we could put somebody on there for WSC. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how. I know we've gotten several applications that are pretty promising. There seems to be real interest. All right, that's me. Look at that. I did it in 16 minutes.
Yeah.
I have a question before you go.
Okay.
I'm not putting anybody on the spot, but we do have a climate action plan,
Right.
5-year plan. And in order for that to work, to get everything done, we've asked in the past for an additional staff member in sustainability. Is that going to be in the budget, or where are we with that? And I'm really looking at it from the point of moving ahead with the 5-year part of the climate action plan.
Yeah, I mean, to be blunt, it's not in the plan. It's not in the budget right now. And budget is pretty tight. And so, I think that certainly something we want to facilitate, but where we are right now in terms of staffing, it's been a real challenge. That's where we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
appreciate it. Even if there was some consideration for a part-time position or something to help facilitate what really needs to get done, I think this committee would appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so we're going to jump right into pollinator gardens.
Very pretty.
And this is really, we have Amy here from Livability, if anyone has any questions. So this is really how this discussion started. So Livability approached me and said, we're getting some folks who are telling us this is a pollinator garden and we think it might be a neglected yard, but at the same time, we're seeing pollinators flying around, so it's working. What can we do to encourage pollinator gardens while also make sure we're enforcing our code? And how can we let our residents know, give them some guidelines on how they can have a pollinator garden, best practices, and make sure it complies with code. So that was sort of the impetus. This is Jessica White. She gave us permission to use these. She dressed up as a pollinator garden for Halloween, and Amy shared these with me. So there's a lot of excitement for pollinator gardens, and it's more just how do we just make this a little more succinct. So the goal of this guide, like I said, is we want to support these gardens, but we also want to provide, make sure folks are complying and give them some guidance. So I was going to go through go through a couple pages here with you. I don't think I ever shared the screen on Zoom. Sorry, y'all. Okay. There's a couple pages in this.
You were listening.
You could listen. Thank you. Here we go. Okay. So there are a couple really quick things I wanted to point out, and then I would like everyone, if you'd like, you can take some time yourself to try to go through this and make any edits. This is in kind of final draft stage. So the main thing I wanted to point out, there's a couple things that I thought were just pretty neat that I did not know about before. Bees nest in the ground. We need to keep some bare ground open for them. These hollow, when your plants die, don't just rip them out in the winter. If you leave like a foot of the hollow stems, this is actually where a lot of pollinators will nest. And this is pretty cool too. So just because there's leaf cuts doesn't mean, you should rip the leaf off and it's bad. That's pretty normal. It's a sign of a healthy ecosystem. And in this case, these C shapes were cut by a bee to make its nest. So there's some info in here that I think is new to people and could be really helpful. And then we kind of get to this checklist for compliance with the code. So we're looking for, edges, keeping this tidy, making sure everything's at a manageable height. Mowing turf, there's a difference between turf and urban gardens. Being able to know what species are in your garden and talk the talk to a code enforcement officer or to a curious neighbor. And then we give some examples pictures of these. And before I jump into those, there was one thing that we wanted to specifically ask the committee about, this idea of no mow March. So in most places, it's called no mow May. And basically, it's don't mow your grass because all the pollinators are waiting to emerge in the spring grasses. And when you mow, you basically disturb that habitat. So in Charleston, this actually happens the end of March to early April. So we're calling this no mow March. And we're proposing, how it during the end of March and mid-April, could we observe this and encourage light to no mowing within reason, so that something like this in the bottom right could be okay and acceptable for just a couple weeks of the year. Our code officially uses the word unsightly. So there is no definition to that. And instead of going in and changing the code, we thought we would just provide guidelines first to see if this could help. So here's a couple of examples. Pollinator gardens, that they don't have to be perfectly manicured, but they have edges, they have mulch. You can see there's leaves in this one, versus neglected yards, really just overgrown grasses. And these are actually examples locally, all 4 of those. And here's some more extreme examples. So a pollinator garden can be huge too, can be more extreme versus just not mowing your yard. So how do we find that middle ground? So I'm curious, if the committee has any thoughts about this no mow May, March. Yeah.
I have a few questions with this. One, when you're looking at the pollinator garden, if you could go back to your the bigger picture down, I think, yes. So one of the things we talk about when it's a pollinator garden, they specifically with native plants, there's not always going to be blooms year round. So I don't know if this highlighted kind of seasonal pollinator gardens and the importance of the dormancy stage, which you talked a little bit about. And so I do think maybe some language on that might be interested, and that also would fall into no mow March because it's about that sort of detritus and that pollinator exposure and that coming up for the bees, specifically your bumblebees, which are your ones that are in that space. And so it's no mow March. And I think, do you have anything about leave your leaves?
We do.
I think I remember that on one of the
So
first ones.
Lucy helped us edit this originally. Maybe you could help me towards the end here, but leave your leaves or move them a bit. Like you can move them into the garden spaces. They don't necessarily have to be left all over your lawn if you don't like the aesthetics of that. That said, leaves should be able to be left on the lawn too. So there's a little bit of like a push of like, what someone thinks is a beautiful garden, someone else might not, and vice versa. So this is a very subjective subject.
And I think for one of the things with no mow March, what people have done that have maybe larger yards is leave a patch. And then there was like little signs that I think, I remember it in Madison, Wisconsin, they had quite a few of the little patches and the city provided signs that were like no mow March for those patches. So that could be something to help make people understand and kind of make that search image like, oh, this is why it looks like this, or maybe even leaving a portion of their yard in that specific area.
I wanted to follow up on that. So with the leaves, I wanted to see if we could put in some information to educate people that blowing the leaves off their yard actually blows the topsoil off their yard.
Yeah, we
It
actually don't have any
actually
leaf blower
damages
stuff
their
in there.
grass. So, I don't think people understand that. Yeah, and then to your point, Lucy, I think some pictures, like this picture on the left does kind of get at what she's talking about too, but maybe some pictures that show a pollinator garden instead of that big one that you had on there, that big one, but that big one in the wind. Because it's going to look completely different in the wind.
And the big one too is a little intimidating because people look at it and they're like, there's no way in hell I got a green enough thumb to make that happen.
Right.
And so if there's one that's doesn't look like it's out of Southern Living, I'm just, the reality of it is 90% of people are going to be looking at doing a more scaled back version. So if there's a local gardener that we have, even that is better than my garden. I just, again, you want people baby steps, right? That if this is going to be something that we're really encouraging people across the city to implement, let's just start with something simple. And Again, that's beautiful. But that's probably some real money.
Is that ever downtown on the,
Roots and Shoots sent that to me, so I'm not totally sure where it is,
Okay.
but I know all four of
I've
these
been in
pictures.
one of those gardens.
First the other.
So I have a question, going back to the beginning about this balancing act between the neglected yard. So are people using not mowing their yard and trying to say it's a butterfly garden?
Yes,
or
that's kind of
pollinator
what
garden?
started this.
And so is there a clear definition then of what the pollinator garden consists of? So then it's easy to respond for a ticket or code enforcement to say, hey, this does meet the definition or it doesn't, so.
And that's precisely why we
That's
asked
the problem.
Katie to help, because we were getting images of weeds and, claims that they were pollinator gardens.
Sorry, guys.
I think when I've looked at similar pollinator advisory guides, one of the things that they focus on a lot is the word intention. So I think that could be something that we could kind of include, because you can tell based on when someone they have intention for their yard, or like when we're trying at a garden, we're not asking them to have like a perfect pristine garden, but are they putting intention into it? And so that was one of the words I feel like.
It's in there a lot,
Yeah, I was
yeah.
gonna say
Kind of
it's
mixture
consistent
of
with
the
this
plant
too, but yeah.
requirements or something to that effect, right?
Has our Parks Department have any pollinator gardens? As
The Parks
examples?
Department has looked at this. We have some pollinators, so our relationship with the Charleston Parks Conservancy, they have put in pollinator gardens
Okay.
and parks, and they maintain them because they require a little bit of expertise
Mhm.
and skill set to be able to know what's native and not.
So there are good examples that people can look at.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, we could.
Katie,
I think that would be
Okay.
if we could do that rather than what you have there are beautiful, but I sort of would agree with the mayor. Most people are not gonna do that. But if they saw some examples that our Parks Department is doing, or the conservancy, then that would be great.
Okay. And if anyone has a better picture,
I probably have some,
yeah.
but those are more residential spaces as
Right.
opposed to the parks places that will be a little bit
Yeah, I've got- yeah.
luxurious. So I think with the intention for those pictures specifically was just like, what does it look like in a small path? And the other thing that Charleston has to focus a lot on is, yes, we have a lot of sun, but we also have a fair amount of shade. So how we can grow specific native plants, and with the flooding and that sort of thing. So I think that was just like a description of what a resident could do versus our parks that do have some really beautiful gardens, but they're gonna be more of your southern.
They're gonna be
gardens.
different,
There's-
yeah.
And yeah, a little
That's a
bit,
good point.
and they get more maintenance than the
Mm.
ones here. Like that one probably doesn't necessarily need to be maintained as consistently as.
And that one I think is in between, the one with the path is in
Yeah.
between two houses. I think. I think I've been in that garden.
Katie, I can't remember, did the guide have a link to native pollinator plants? So I think that would
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, it
what you were
does.
saying a lot.
When we said pick the plants,
I remember.
right here.
There it
recommend
is,
native
okay.
Plants.
And then I think in that list too, or at least in the resource, if I remember correctly, there's also some information on where and how to plant those, which I think is beneficial, because the other thing is sometimes if you're not a native gardener and you have just a native plants, that doesn't mean just because they're native, they grow anywhere.
Right,
So
right.
I think there's some information on that.
Salt
link.
tolerance. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
And we included a landscape design best practices. I think Rebecca Fanning sent this to me, which was really helpful. To help people, I think a lot of beginner gardeners will, go buy one of everything. And when you look at professionally landscaped places, there's never one of everything. We always, group them in groups of 5 to 7.
Mhm.
You cluster them together, so you have that bigger impact. And that also helps to attract the pollinators better too. So that really helps with having a neater garden when you follow some basic design guidelines versus just checkerboard.
I really liked it. I thought it had a lot of really good resources.
This is Rick DeVoe on the phone or on Zoom. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. do we have compliant vegetable gardens too that we have to be concerned about? Are they under scrutiny by upset neighbors or code enforcement?
I'm gonna let Amy answer that
Not-
question.
We typically don't get complaints about vegetable gardens. Usually it's just someone letting their weeds go wild.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing, that garden that I said was between two houses, I think they also included resilience features in that garden, so there's like a French drain along those houses. So maybe, maybe this could be a yes and, do this and that at the same time. And a couple of these gardens are rain gardens too. So maybe you could just point people towards those more resilience things as well.
You can have it ring.
Sorry, this is Rick again. Do rain gardens have to be permitted?
No,
No.
it's just a
Good.
garden.
Okay,
We glorify a pollinator garden and a rain garden, but at the end of the day, it is a garden full of flowers.
thank you.
Any other thoughts on No Mow March? Do we feel, Amy, do you have anything specific you want to ask or help?
We still have concerns because, we have people telling us weeds or pollinator gardens. So there are going to be people that are just using it as an excuse. But I mean, we're willing to explore, some sort of a balance, I guess, between just not mowing and I don't know. I liked the idea of having patches and really saying this is intentional. We are not mowing this section. We have a sign, something. I like that idea. That might be a good option.
So are you suggesting for that period of time, the no mow, not your whole front yard being mowed, but maybe you reserve a patch and put a sign?
Maybe. I think
What do
that would
folks think of that?
possibly go a long way with their neighbors.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like the idea of signage, so if you are not mowing, then it's clear, there's a reason.
Yeah.
And it kind of explains it to the neighbors, so I think that would be helpful. to
This
determine.
is Adrian. I don't see a reason not to. March is before your fast growing season for yards anyway. And so
Agreed.
if you're going to do it, you're probably going to have minimal sort of complaints in a month like March because it's right at the start of growing season. So there's very little to have grown to then complain about by the end of the month.
I find it interesting that there are landscapers that work around here in my neighborhood, which is in West Ashley, and they come every Wednesday and they cut the neighbor's yard regardless of if it needs cutting. And as the gentleman just mentioned, grass grows at different rates during different seasons of the year. You can go a month without having to mow your lawn and it still appears okay. It doesn't have the nice lines that lawnmowers create. But I just find flexibility is well, at least we need to understand how the natural system works in that regard. Leaves on lawns is supposedly a good thing. Longer grass is better for the root system in grass. If you cut your grass too shallow, you're taking away the root system underneath. So there's a lot of just general information on just grass would be important to include somewhere.
We can certainly be more observant this March and sort of see what's happening and collect some information on what the officers see.
That's a good idea. We could maybe pilot it.
Exactly.
Well, I'm gonna go back to what I asked before, whether it be the Parks Department or the Conservancy. That maybe if they're not mowing, even though, as Adrian said, it might not grow that much, be nice to have a little sign where those lawns are that are not mowed. This is no mow March. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, they exist.
Yeah, but I would put on the sign underneath that, just the sentence, to allow the pollinators
Yeah.
to live, or something like
Because this one
that.
has all the pollinators in it, and so what they did in the picture.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I see that. But I
And then-
think for the person riding past, it's a nice picture. But if you just had a line underneath,
Yeah,
allowing pollinators to live or
Yeah.
to grow or whatever, but.
yeah, I think that's
and-
what Madison had, like.
And then,
picture.
and possibly advertise or publish
Mhm.
where those examples are. And,
Like a QR code.
yeah, or, who's now in charge of all the community groups? That exist, there are HOAs and all
The
these other,
neighborhoods?
the neighborhoods, yeah.
Okay.
Becca's still interested.
Okay, so maybe something that she's doing to get this information out and highlighting the area, the places where we have showcase no March gardens. have no lawns.
Katie, maybe even having a link within the guide to signage that they could download and, yeah, put in the yard.
Okay. Well, good, healthy discussion. Any more thoughts from folks online?
Hey, I have one. Yeah. Oh, on your website, I was looking at that. It says this list features regionally native plants. Could we say it features some?
Yes, if you could make edits, I would
Yes,
love them.
Yes. And then at the bottom, you do have a list of
I'm sorry.
plant
Now
suppliers.
the agenda, but they're redraft. Sorry.
It would be good to add to the list, well, after native plant suppliers, it could be a list of native plant organizations that are
Uh-huh.
local, like
Uh-huh.
Native Plant Society, Tropical Horticulture Society, those sorts of things.
Mhm.
Because they also have been doing a lot of education, so you might be able to go here and get a plant, but these people are gonna have a lot more education.
I think we have them all linked in the back.
It's not on this website.
So you're looking at the website, not the.
Not this,
The
not the
guide.
flyer, but
So
the
I think the
website.
guide has them linked.
So
And
the
the
back
guide
of,
sends you to the website.
the back of this has all
Yes.
kinds of links.
Yeah, so if
And
you could put
there's a
that on
link,
the website as well.
sorry. The guide is on the website.
I think what she's asking is maybe in the body of the website, have some of these links.
Oh, I see.
So they don't have to dig in the guide to find it.
Okay,
Because some of them are already listed on the website, but not an exhaustive.
but not all of
list.
them.
Yeah.
Add the links. Okay. Jamie actually keeps that website up to date, so I'll work with her on that. But yeah, she's had it up for a few years, and
Okay.
you noticed we've been a Bee City USA
Mhm.
since 2021, and she's working really hard to try to work with the Parks Department to make sure we're not using harmful pesticides and things like that. And it's a real battle. All right, well, in all honesty, yeah, this is a draft version, so anyone from the committee, the public, anyone is welcome to redline this. Send me your thoughts, your comments, send in suggestions, spelling changes, you name it, pictures, if you have better pictures. Looking just for more feedback, and we've had a lot of great input from these organizations already. Huge shout out to Roots and Shoots and Native Plants to the People, and a bunch of groups here that have really helped redlines so far. And I think every iteration is getting better and better. And I'm learning so much about native plants. I got to go plant in a friend's garden last weekend, and I was like, okay, I'm pulling weeds, and she's like, that's a plant. I was like, okay. So it's fun learning all this new pieces. So with that, let's jump back. So I just really had a couple updates. So I wanted to update everyone on, so as you know, we have pumpkin smashes coming up. We actually were able to add a third thanks to Charleston Green Drinks and Palmetto Brewing. So we have one Daniel Island this Saturday and one downtown next Thursday. And then of course our West Ashley Thanksgiving Market was our inaugural event last year. So I hope you can come on out and smash the pumpkins. It's pretty fun. If you can't make it to an event, we've got drop sites everywhere. I know Councilmember Boy Greg has already dropped off his pumpkins at New Realm, the drop site, because he was unable to make it this weekend. So And then, of course, we have a food scrap program, and pumpkins are food scraps. So you can drop them off inside these carts once you join the program and sort of go through the little training so you know what items are accepted and whatnot. You can access the carts that way. Any questions on the pumpkin compost?
So on the Smash events, are you looking for volunteers or is that good?
I will happily take a volunteer for the West Ashley event. If you want to come.
I'll be there for a little bit.
That the green drinks event or will you two both be there?
I'll be there.
That we could probably use your help there too.
Yeah, well, our Sarah's meeting's tonight, and I'll see if I can get some volunteers.
Okay. Belvin's coordinating that one at Palmetto.
Okay.
I'm coordinating the Thanksgiving and New Rom's coordinating the Daniel Island. So that's sort of how we divided it up. And huge thank you to the Sierra Club for donating $500 worth of advertising. If you've heard us on the radio on 102.5, promoting all things composting. So thank you. We did that. Okay, yesterday I got an email with our EV charging station data for October. And I thought I would just jump in and share this if it's okay with the committee. So as you know, we upgraded all our charging stations in our downtown garages. And this is sort of what the new station is looking like. I guess I can put the slideshow back on. And this is sort of what we've seen just over the first month. So already over 200 charging stations, and about 5% of these are coming from city vehicles. We only have 2 city vehicles. So here you can see them broken down by site. So the Gilliard Garage has 8 stations, and it's pretty cool to see this. So the Visitor Center Garage has 4 stations. You can see we're getting 2 to 3 sessions a day. And when you do the math here, they're about 2 to 3 hours each. So that's pretty good for us today, a charger being used a couple times a day for the first month. And it's only going to go up from here. And I did have a chance to share this with Westy and other Danny and Dominion folks, and they're pretty excited about it, and they say it's only going to go up too.
Is this through their program or is it your own?
This is our own program. Yes. And then I just thought I'd end with a very quick reminder that the election is over. So if you see these signs everywhere, we recycle these right here in 2 George down in the permit center. That bottom metal piece, we need it for public service announcements that are required by code. So we usually buy them. So we don't have to buy them if you recycle them. We'll reuse them. And Molly handles that program in our planning department. She's been super helpful. So.
Cool.
Is there any new business the committee would like to discussion or mention for next?
When do you think you could give us back an update on the climate action plan? Like, that dashboard that you did a year ago?
So every year we do an update on the status of the climate action plan, and typically we don't get the data in until the
That's
end
right,
of
yeah,
January. So I would expect that first meeting, we'll go through the data of that
Good,
plan,
okay.
and we can see how on track or not on track we are. I can tell you we are a little behind, so.
Yeah.
We're trying to hit that 5-year and then knowing that we need to upgrade this plan soon. So, but yeah,
And,
I'll make a note to make sure we do that.
and the fact that you're not getting any assistance doesn't help. So.
It is very challenging. It would be a lot better if we had other staff, yes.
When do you foresee the kickoff for the planning for the next plan?
Well, I think we need to talk about that at the meeting.
Okay.
Because the last plan we did in-house, yours truly did it. So we need to figure out if we want to do that again, or if it's funding we want to put towards it and do something maybe more in depth on specific sectors behind. Little kind of, I think it would be good for the committee to discuss that and guide that discussion, which will inform the 2025 budget or the 2026 budget requests, which we start to put in June. There are thoughts from the committee before we jump to the public comment period? All right, well, is anybody, would anyone like to be heard? Folks in the back, no?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
For the,
So can you just state your name and?
I go to the bottom.
Where it says stop share.
Oh. Okay, and if anyone online would like to be heard, please raise your hand. I did not see any comments submitted or requests to be submitted, so take it away, Brooke.
Brooke Blosser, 131 Spring Street. I just had a question about the Basin Flood Action Committee. When are the applications due for that committee?
I believe it would be on the website, and I can ask Kaylin and get back to you. I know it's open right now. I would imagine it's rolling for a little bit because it's so important to find the right people for that committee, as it's very heavy technical focus. I can get back to you on that if that's okay. It's probably on that website though.
Yeah, okay, cool, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone online like to be heard?
Good.
And okay, and Elizabeth is actually here from, I did not introduce you, Elizabeth. I apologize. I missed
No,
that.
no worries. That's okay. I'm here. Danny wasn't able to make it, and so I told him I'd be happy to sit in. I've been taking some notes in case he has any questions later.
Great, we
But
appreciate
thanks for
that.
having me. Yeah.
Thanks, Rick and Adrian, for being available online. I wanted to ask you also, obviously, this is our last meeting of 2024, so usually December-ish is when we create our 2025 meeting schedule. We have had some folks have some challenges with the schedule. We no longer have the public meeting room because TRC meets down there, so that's why we are bumped up here. How do folks feel about meeting in person versus online? In the past couple of years, we've been doing every other. It does seem like there's a lot of folks in here who are working during the day, and it's a lot easier to jump on a Zoom. However, we have very healthy discussions when we're in person. So just curious if anyone had any thoughts or recommendations for change of our current schedule.
I think we should do both still.
I think it mixes the accessibility of it, but like you said, you're not gonna have that great discussion on Zoom.
Yeah, I agree. Katie, I would have been there in person if a meeting had not have run long and I knew I couldn't make it to you. So, yeah, I think offering both allows me in a day like today where I would have not made it to dial in. But ordinarily I will be there in person.
Yeah, I second that remark.
Okay. Any other? So stick with the schedule,
Yep.
stick with the same. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. If there's no other thoughts, I'll turn it over to Stuart to close us out, who's the vice chair.
Gee, thank you. Thank you for everything you do. And thank you for all participating. And stay healthy and smile and be happy.
Yay.
And ignore politics.
Imagine pumpkins. All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great day.
Bye, thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.